Well, I grew up in the Methodist Church. My mom and dad have always taken me to church, and they were longtime Methodist. And when I was a teenager, I had a dear friend of mine that was on the way to the house to pick me up to go to a meeting. His name was Chucky Schaefer, and we lived in Ponchatoula, and he was killed in an accident on the way to my house. And it was just before Christmas. And our pastor was Jack Weingart. He was a very special person in my life. And through working through Chucky's death with him, I felt a call to ministry. And he helped guide and direct that call for several years while he was at Ponchatoula. He took us on youth trips. He did everything for the church. He was just a wonderful person. And I learned a lot from Jack Weingart. So he was my first influence in the ministry. He also introduced me to the politics of ministry, and that part didn't sit well with me, so I ran from the ministry for many years. It was some 20 years later before I finally settled down and realized that everywhere I go in life, I'm faced with politics. And so on the way back from Vienna, Austria in 1990, I was sitting on a plane with my wife looking at my calendar for the week ahead and realized I only had 5 hours of family time scheduled for the entire week. And I was in life insurance sales and automobile insurance with Farm Bureau Insurance. And during that time, I decided that life was getting too short and going too fast, and that I really was called to ministry, and that's where I needed to be. And so when I got home, I did everything backwards. I quit my job. A dear friend of mine in Slidell, in Houma, Louisiana, Hartwell Lewis, tried to convince me to go into business with him and work for him with venture capital, and offered me a really good job. But I told him I felt it was time for me to go into ministry, and so he paid for my flight to Perkins School of Theology, where I met John Wesley Hart, Bishop John Wesley Hart. And Hartwell sent me there thinking I'd come back realizing that I shouldn't go into ministry and I would go to work for him, but I didn't. I went into the ministry. And probably one of the most exciting services I did as a pastor was while serving Lake Providence, Louisiana. The church there, Bishop Dan Solomon called Marie Williams, who was my district superintendent at that time, and said he was on his way to General Conference and wanted to know where he could preach on Easter morning and do a sunrise service. And so she called me, and I guess his roadmap took him through Lake Providence. So he drove up and did my Easter sunrise service on the lake at one of my parishioners' homes. And they had a big deck outside over the lake, and you could watch the sunrise over the lake. And it was a wonderful service. We had a very good attendance, and Bishop Solomon was very happy, and it was one of my most memorable church services. Growing up, I had a lot of influence that influenced my life as far as religion. John and Dixie Odom with the camp at Camp Ostruma was a major influence in my life. In 1966, I went on their mission tour, and it was an exciting time, but they really had a tremendous effect on my life growing up and teaching me. And so I pretty much lived at Camp Ostruma from the time I was 10 years old until I graduated high school. When I started Perkins School of Theology, I met two people during that process. One of them was Brent Porterfield. He was a student pastor also from Murchison, which is right close to Winona. And we got to Perkins and met Trent Baggett, and the three of us got to talking, and so we rented an apartment off campus. And so there were the three of us and in this apartment, and we were joined by a young man, Oscar, who was from Latvia, and he was a violinist, and he was playing with the symphony, and he was also a student at SMU taking some courses. He was there on a student visa. But the three of us lived together for 4 years on campus or right off campus, and our families lived back at the Charge where we were all student appointed to, and so I still connect with those guys. They are very much my mentors and my go-to people when I need something, and they have tremendously affected my ministry and my theology and my thinking. It's been a wonderful journey that began. The ministry side began in 1990, but I've been serving on a finance committee in a church since I was 13 and put on a board as a youth representative. I've been trying ever since then to get off the finance committee, and I can't get off until I retire, so I'm retiring.